Hi folks, it's Mike Murphy, and in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to disable SSH password login and use only SSH keys when you remotely connect to your Hostinger VPS. The purpose or the goal of this tutorial is to turn off or to disable the option to use passwords so you only use SSH keys when you remotely connect to your Hostinger VPS over SSH. The prerequisites or requirements in order to be able to follow along in today's tutorial. You must have already generated a pair of SSH keys and have added the public SSH key to your Hostinger VPS, and you must already be able to connect and log in remotely to your Hostinger VPS terminal over SSH using your SSH keys. This tutorial assumes that you already have a basic understanding or familiarity with the terms SSH and SSH keys. And if you don't, there are links in the description box to in-depth tutorials about both. But I'm not going to leave you hanging, especially if you're just a little bit fuzzy on what the terms mean. SSH stands for Secure Shell. This is a networking protocol. It is end-to-end encrypted, so when you connect from your computer to a remote server like your Hostinger VPS, the connection is encrypted, so it is a secure connection. Think of SSH like a secure tunnel between your computer and your Hostinger VPS. All of the data going back and forth lives inside of this secure tunnel, so nobody can get in because the network is encrypted from end to end. SSH keys are the credentials that you need for your computer to be able to connect to your Hostinger VPS remotely over SSH. SSH keys are considered very secure because there are no passwords involved. SSH keys are a pair of cryptographic keys. There is a private key that you generate and store locally on your computer, and then there is a public SSH key that you put on your remote server like your Hostinger VPS. When I want to connect my MacBook Pro from anywhere in the world to my Hostinger VPS terminal, I can just type out SSH space. Now you're going to enter the username that you want to sign into your server in. Root is the default super user. And you put the @ symbol. Then you're going to type out your VPS IP address, or you can use a subdomain in your custom domain if you have that mapped to your VPS IP address and SSH. Now, when I tap return to send this command, my MacBook Pro is basically knocking on the front door of my Hostinger VPS by default. The security guard that is standing in front of the VPS that checks credentials is going to tell my MacBook Pro the credentials that I accept are either passwords or SSH keys. If you have either a password or an SSH key, I will allow you access to the VPS. In this tutorial, we are changing the default rules. We are going to tell the security guard that passwords are no longer an acceptable credential to get access to the VPS over SSH. So when the MacBook Pro comes a knocking, wanting to get access to the VPS over SSH, the only acceptable credential to get access is if the MacBook Pro hands the VPS a private SSH key, which is going to be the match for the public SSH key, which is already stored on the VPS. Whether you use a password or an SSH key as your credentials doesn't really affect the SSH connection. It's going to be secure either way. The problem, or the reason why we want to disable passwords as a credential option, is just to take passwords off the table because passwords can be hacked. They can be guessed. And once somebody gets access to your password, well, then they'll be able to access your VPS because your VPS allows either passwords or SSH keys. So we want to minimize the risk and say, okay, SSH keys are nearly unhackable. People can't guess because there's no passwords with SSH keys. So if we take passwords out of the equation and only use SSH keys, which are the much more secure solution, well, then you're just going to eliminate risk and eliminate that ability of anyone being able to figure out your password and getting unauthorized access to your VPS. And your computer is smart enough to know that whenever you ask it to connect to something remotely over SSH, that you want to use SSH keys. So it is going to look for the SSH keys that you've generated and stored locally on your computer and just automatically use those as credentials. It's not going to ask you, do you want to use an SSH key or do you want to use a password? It is always going to use the SSH key as long as it's available. And if it cannot find the SSH keys, well, then it's going to say, okay, you have no SSH keys, so you have to give me a password. Here I am in Termius, which is an SSH client, which allows me to connect to remote servers over SSH. I have two shortcuts to do the exact same thing. If I double click on either shortcut, it connects me to my Hostinger VPS terminal over SSH. Click the second one. It's doing the exact same thing. The difference between these two shortcuts is this first one uses passwords as credentials. The second one uses SSH keys. So by the end of this tutorial, this password one is no longer going to work, and I'm only going to be able to use the SSH key as credentials. Step 1. Before you disable password login for SSH, make sure that your SSH keys work. Make sure that you can connect remotely to your Hostinger VPS terminal using SSH keys. So if you use an SSH client like Termius, well, just make sure that you're able to connect successfully to your VPS using the SSH keys as your credentials. Or if you prefer connecting to your VPS remotely over SSH in the MacOS Terminal or Command Shell if you're on Windows, just double check and make sure you're able to connect. Notice it didn't prompt me for passwords, so my MacBook automatically used my SSH keys as credentials, so I am safe to disable passwords on my VPS, knowing that my MacBook is going to use the SSH keys. Step 2. We're just going to see what the current SSH configuration settings are on our Hostinger VPS. And to do that, we're just going to copy and paste this long command in the VPS terminal. I'm going to select this entire command. I'm going to copy it to my clipboard, Command C, and then I'm going to paste this in the command line of my VPS terminal, and we're going to get one of these three results. So I'm just going to tap Return. So here is the results of our search that we're going to be paying attention to in this tutorial. We're just going to ignore these second two lines. But here is a real gotcha moment. If you're not paying attention, you might just see this results as saying password authentication yes. But you need to pay attention to the hashtag. The hashtag indicates that this setting in the configuration file is commented out. The VPS is completely ignoring the setting. And when you comment out the setting, the default is always going to be set to yes. So even if you change this from yes to no, if there's a hashtag or if you're commenting this out, your VPS is always going to see it as yes. And I have that indicated on my cheat sheet. So at first glance, it looks like this is what the results were, password authentication yes. But in reality, there was a hashtag, so it was commented out. So even if we change this from yes to no, it's always going to be set to yes. So we want to make sure that when we open up the configuration file, we remove the hashtag and change it from yes to no. And to actually make changes to your SSH configuration files so you can change the password authentication from yes to no, what you need to do is open up the SSH configuration file in the Nano text editor. To do that, I'm just going to copy this command, Command C. I'll go back to my VPS terminal, I'll paste that in, and when I tap Return, that is going to open up the SSH configuration file in the Nano text editor. I'm going to use the arrow keys on my keyboard to move the cursor, and I'm just going to keep tapping the down arrow key until I see the line Password Authentication. So I don't see it on the first page, so I'm just going to keep going until I see it. I'm just tapping the down arrow, and there it is right there. password authentication. And notice there's a hashtag at the beginning, so anytime you see a hashtag in front of a line, that line is commented out. You're just telling the VPS, just ignore this line, and it's just going to set it to whatever the default is for that commented setting. So in our case, the default setting is going to be yes, but we want it to be no. So we need to remove the hashtag and change it from yes to no. So I'll use the right arrow key to go to the P. I'm going to tap the delete or the backspace key. That removed the hashtag. So notice it changed from that blue to white, indicating that this setting is now active. It is no longer commented out. So it's currently set to yes, which is what it was when it had the hashtag, but we want it set to no. So I'm using the right arrow key to go to the end. I'll tap the delete or the backspace key. I'm going to enter no. That's the only change that we need to make in the SSH configuration file. So now we need to save or to write out the changes in the Nano text editor. This is a 3-step process. So first you press the control key and you tap the letter O. That writes out the changes in the text editor. So control O. Now to commit those changes, you're going to tap the return or the enter key. And the last step is to exit out of the Nano text editor, and for that, you're going to press the control key and tap the letter X. When you exit the Nano text editor, that will return you back to the VPS terminal. This is future Mike here. What I'm about to share with you was not part of my original tutorial outline, but I ran into a little issue, and I'm going to share that with you as a teaching moment. In case this happens to you, you will know how to fix it. I restarted the SSH service on my VPS. I even checked the SSH config file just to confirm that password authentication was set to no hashtag, so everything was looking good. I then opened up Termius. I was all ready to double-click on my shortcut for passwords, expecting it to fail, and then I was going to celebrate with you saying, see, everything worked perfectly. Passwords are now disabled for SSH, but I double-clicked on my shortcut, and even though the password authentication was set to no, I was still able to connect over SSH using passwords. But I found the problem, and I'm going to share that with you right now. So whenever I run into an issue or I need troubleshooting help, the first thing I do in my Hostinger VPS dashboard, I click the Ask AI button in the top right corner. The Ask Kodee chat window opens up, and I just told Kodee what my issue was. I disabled the password authentication, but I'm still able to sign in over SSH. What's going on? And Kodee told me about this drop-in file by OpenSSH. So it's just another configuration file that has password authentication set to yes, and it's overriding the original SSH config file. So once you find that other file, you set that to no. So there's really 2 config files. The second one I didn't know about, but thanks to Kodee, I was able to find it, change it, and that fixed the issue. Remember in step 2, we checked the current SSH config file, and the results returned the hashtag password authentication yes. So then we opened up the SSH config file and changed it to no. We already know that. So if I run this right now, Command C, go back to the terminal, paste it in, it's going to return password authentication no because we changed it. So this is telling me that everything should work. Again, I tried it in Termius and in the terminal, and I was still able to sign in with passwords. So this SSHD/T, this is going to tell me what the SSH service is actually seeing. Is it seeing password authentication no, or is it seeing password authentication yes? And if it comes out yes, well then that's telling me there's another configuration file, and then we're going to find that. So let's just run this command. I already know what's going to happen, but I'll Command C, Command V, paste it in, and sure enough, this is actually what the SSH service is using, so that is why I'm still able to sign in. So now we just need to find that second file and change it to no, and it should fix all the issues. So in the previous step, the SSHD, if it returns yes, which is what it did, then that is telling us there is a drop-in file that is overriding our SSH config file. This command is like a super search. It's going to search through all of the SSH related config files. It is just looking for that line that says password authentication, and we are looking for the one that says yes. I'm going to select the entire command, Command C to copy it to my clipboard. I'm going to go back into the terminal. I'll paste that in, Command V, tap return. So check it out. This super search command that we just ran told me that there are 3 different SSH config files on my VPS that all contain the line password authentication. In step 3, we opened up the main SSH config file, and in the command is the path or the location of that config file on my VPS. And if we go back to the results of the command, you will see the same path. So this first result right here is the main SSH config file that we already changed, and we can confirm that the password authentication is currently set to no. But when we ran that other command, the source of truth, we know that our SSH service is showing password yes, so we know that this location is the file that we need to change, and here is the path right here to that file. So now we're going to edit that drop-in file, or the second config file that I didn't know existed. I'm just going to copy this. Notice that's the path that showed up. So I'm just going to copy this, Command C, and the Nano is telling me it's going to open up the Nano text editor. So back to the terminal, and I can type clear just to make a clear window here. I'm going to paste that in. I'll tap return. The Nano editor is open. The only setting in this config file is the password authentication. So with the arrow keys on my keyboard, I'm going to go to the end. I'll tap the delete key. And now I'm just going to type in the word no. And then we're going to do that 3-step process to save or to write out, commit, and then to exit the Nano editor. So step 1, you're going to press the control key and tap the letter O. So control O. And now you're going to tap the enter or return key to commit the changes. And now we're going to exit the Nano editor, control, and tap the letter X that will return you back to the terminal. Now in theory, we should be able to restart the SSH service, but just let's check the source of truth to make sure that it returns password authentication no. So Command C, I'll return back to the VPS terminal. Command V, sure enough, password authentication is set to no in both the main configuration file and now in this secondary configuration file. So we should be able to restart the SSH service and then test and make sure that passwords are disabled for SSH connections. And notice the warning on the bottom. If you are doing all of this remotely using SSH, well, you want to keep the terminal session open in case anything goes wrong, because when you disable the passwords, if you do not have the SSH keys set up, you're going to be locked out. And if that's the case, you can always get back in by just signing into your VPS dashboard. So let's just go ahead and restart the SSH service. I'm back in my VPS terminal. I'm going to paste it in. It doesn't look like anything happens when I tap the enter return key, but it does restart things. I'm going to first test it out in the MacOS Terminal. You can do this on Windows as well. This command right here is going to force my Mac to try and use passwords. Remember how I told you your computer's smart? It's going to always try to use SSH keys. Well, this command right here is going to force it to try to use passwords. And hopefully it comes back as permission denied because passwords are no longer accepted when I want to connect over SSH. So I'm just going to copy this and just note at the end, you have to put in your username, which is probably going to be root or your sudo username, and then you're going to put in your VPS IP address or your custom subdomain. So I'm just going to copy this, Command C, and I have a terminal window open on my Mac. This will also work on Windows. Command V, and I just need to change the end. Again, you can use root, or if you've created a non-root sudo username, you can do that here. I'll put @. Now you're going to enter in your VPS IP address, or if you have a subdomain set up like I do, SSH, I'm going to put in my custom domain. It's the exact same thing as me putting in my VPS. It just keeps it hidden from you, and it's also easier to remember. I'll tap return, cross my fingers. Hopefully it says denied. Bingo. Permission denied. I must use an SSH key in order to get access to my VPS. And if I was you watching this tutorial right now, I probably would be thinking, okay, prove it. Connect to your VPS right now using an SSH key. So let's give it a try. Remember, my MacBook is always going to try to use an SSH key first. So it doesn't even care about passwords unless I try to force it to use it. So I'm just going to type in SSH space, I'll put in root at, so ssh.imurf.com, tap return. I need to authenticate the first time, but it is looking for my SSH key, which is in 1Password. And how about that? I am now connected over SSH using an SSH key. And for the final test, here I am in my SSH Client Termius. At the beginning of this tutorial, I was able to connect remotely to my VPS over SSH using either passwords or SSH keys. So now when I double click on the password shortcut, I should get an error message, or it should tell me that I am unable to connect. So I'll double click. Sure enough, connection failed. That is a good sign. And I'll go back to the second one, SSH key, double click, and I am still able to connect. Passwords have been disabled for SSH on my VPS. Nice work. Just know that you can always reverse what we did today. If you decide that you want to go back to having passwords as an option for SSH, just open up the main SSH config file, change password authentication back to yes, and open up that second drop-in file, do the same, change password authentication from no to yes, restart the SSH service, and now you will be able to use passwords as an option again. And now you have one more layer to add to your VPS security stack. That is how you disable SSH password login options, so you can only use SSH keys when you want to remotely and securely connect to your Hostinger VPS over SSH. My name is Mike Murphy, your AI handyman. Cheers.